We have Kitty W. Kitri. She is on the LPL co-streams. She's playing zombies and Plants vs Zombies. It's an older game. I think I've seen it before. She's good people. She's really good caster. She is entertaining, charismatic. If you're into League of Legends, go support her channel. She's good people again. Always entertaining. Says what's on her mind. Leads her room and leads her channel. And stay for a while. You like chat, the atmosphere, you like League, like talking banter, being witty. This is blackberry tea. Really good, if I can say so myself. For Kitty, she is Australian, American, practicing singing, and also practicing other accents, in case everyone to like act, be an actor. But as I would say in Australia, it's not the twang, it's not the twang in the voice. It's a twang. It'd be like being an American is essentially just us free flowing with our English language as we just kind of navigate our own way, not giving two hoots, two cahoots, two junks, two jams, two nothings, or giving a damn about what the other English language are thinking. The other English speakers are so stuck. The British are just stuck. As if they're from Kensington, they're stuck. And so as Americans, we're gonna speak English, but at a much more faster pace, and not really give to hoots, uh, to what the other English speakers are speaking. But if it's Australian, there's no twang like if you're in Texas. Texas has a twang. They like to extend what they say, over pronunciate what they say, and so, as the British would say, they also have a twang in their voices. It could be much more Nottingham if it wasn't so much Nottingham. And if they're further north, they're Welsh, and they're further west, if it's Irish, then there's no angst in their voice than there of Ireland. And if they're like northern Welsh descent, then people think like it's a little heavier, a little raspier, a little more raucous in their voice, a little more raucous where they're going. Like, aye, a little more northern. And then if you're like Texas English, because that's the funny part, is all the other folks out there don't like to roll their R's as much, but if they roll their R's a little longer, if they would, twang, then the English down in Texas, back to my American accent. So the English down in Texas, because they're all English speaking. New York English is a little more brutish. You don't know you're meeting a New Yorker because they're going to be ever so friendly about that they're from New York. And there's multiple accents in Philly, but I find most hilarious is that actually the true accent of Philadelphians are Southern Philadelphians because they make up the core of the city. Southern Philadelphia is at first built and devised. Everything south of what was now South Philly is Philly. Everything of North Philly is New Money. So let me quickly explain the vernacular of the English language and you run into other English speakers. And to no disrespect, or I'm not talking to Kitty in general, but just kind of out into the nether, or the neither, or the void of the internets, and for posterity and to anyone that watches in the future. So the real Philly accent is of the black families that were there with the other white families, but that were in southern Philly. So as the black families that were there and built out their peoples, they have the actual accent of Philadelphia. Okay, and then all the new money and all the white people that moved into Philly moved into North Philly and started occupying and building new territories. They didn't uproot and plant their trees and really spread up and grow tall. They like white people as they moved into North Philly like moved in and started making new money, so they became North Philly. And they kept trying to attract and build out more. So that's why you see the trains. I'll explain this. You see the trains navigate through North Philly, but the old trains go south in Philadelphia. And so that's when you see Runington people. They'll have like a different kind of accent. And there's a northern Philadelphia accent. It's a lot of new money. And a lot of the brick homes that are further south, and brick homes that are north, but homes that are south, trains that go south, that's the real Philadelphia accent. The families that have been there, the older black families that have been there, they're much more connected as a unit. So back to the accent. So what's really funny is that American accents, like when if you hear Kitty do her thing, she's Australian. She's gonna have an Australian accent. She's still an English speaker. It's English, but it's English. English is vernacular, common, or comes from its etymology, its root, mother tongue is is of Celtic or Celtic or Welsh or Irish descent. The language has been lost. It's that bad. When you look at, excuse me, sorry, I'm burping, because I ate like an hour ago, like 2 hours ago. I'm drinking tea. There are so many bad wars and bad genocides that the term used today is so sad. They say Gaelic or they say it's the Gaelic language, but that's not true. Irish and their hate, but also the Italians and their hate have fought for hundreds and hundreds of years against each other. 3 times did Rome fall. So it was the Irish. First there were Irish kingdoms, and there were Celtic kingdoms and Celtic kingdoms and Welsh kingdoms and Scottish kingdoms, literal vast empires. Swords, knight armor, everything. War bands, war paint, everything. Hundreds of thousands of troops. They duke it out over hundreds of years. People aren't thinking about these past 100 years. Oh, no. The period for about 900 years was just like, they're called Irish Klansmen. And these Irish Klansmen, sorry, I got to block this person really quick. Hold on. It's bots. Just bots coming in. Bots. Please remember that. These people have now created these bots that go around to people's channels. It's like generating income for them. So people have used AI to create these bots, and then the AI acts as a human and bypasses all of the checks of security that a website has to then do business for you. So I just had to stay for a second, report this bot, and then block them. And then, but yeah, just to go back to history and the English language. Kitty was speaking English, English. It's English, but we say English, but it's not English. It's English, and it derives from the Normans, the norms. The Normans and norms were so synonymous with being normal. They were a group of people to what you use today as the basis of normal. No offense that they were not particular in any fashion, but that they were mass and everywhere. So the Irish kingdoms, the Welsh kingdoms, the Norman kingdoms, the Breconshire kingdoms, the Welsh kingdoms, the Wales, the Scottish, the Irish, all these other kingdoms were massive and huge. And the Italians for like 900-year period. We're only thinking about the past 100-year wars now. No. 900-year period. 9 times all the hate you've seen now in the past 100 years. 9 times the hate that you've seen in the past 100 years. Take the past 100 years of war, you understand. 900 years of warfare. Italians and their become city-states. They were each like re-fortified. Think like a 140K, like a hive city. That's the basis how it operates. You have these massive. They built city-states. They built each of their city to be like a city fortress. So a lot of the city-states in Rome, in Greco-Roman times, before Greco-Roman times, were like hive cities, like 140K. They built each city to be a fortified stone mason fortress. They wanted to make sure that every city street a man and a child could fight another army to the death. But like city streets, every home was fortified stone with tile to withstand artillery and rocks and bombs. And so every time they went to war with another city, they just hunkered down. They had underground bathrooms, okay? They had underwater hot springs. They had underground supplies of grain and food. And so when other city states would invade and destroy each other in Italy, each city state is like a city fortress, like a hive city. And they're so used to siege warfare. They still went about their life. But until eventually, uh, two major uh, families kind of destroyed each other to oblivion. And this happened in Rome. And it was like a romantic, horrible collage of like a Japanese Civil War and Italian Civil War and straight genocide. Italy's in their imperialism, during a 900-year period, uh, would send out war bands and legionnaires to invade northern Irish, Welsh, Celtic, Norman kingdoms, Scottish kingdoms, Welsh kingdoms, the Celtic kingdoms, the Celtic kingdoms would invade all these other northern humans, destroy their economy, rape the women, take on a whole bunch of slaves, and bring them back to Italy. And then the Italy city fortresses for 900 years would brag about their wins in their wars by creating statues in stone. So Italy has the Greco-Roman you see today is derived from the original Roman city-states that had battled for 900 years and horrifying, sometimes heroic, disgusting genocide and imperialism of listening to one person, either one queen or one emperor, one man or one empress, like duke it out and kill each other. People are like, what? There were no empresses in Italian. Yes, there were. There were powerful, rich bank families, and the women that were in those positions of power among those Italian bank families made sure that they paid men to paint their victories. They're the women that there's the power and sex of the woman actually came to the famous and rich Italian female bankers, and they made sure that the men, their husbands in every single photo, were on a lower scale, were in a lower position in any of the paintings. They solidified their win, horrific genocide that they committed over 900 years, and so they would commit genocide to Irish kingdoms, Norman kingdoms, Welsh kingdoms, and his trophies and winnings of those wars, the paintings of the Italian women would make sure that they're in a position of power, sitting in the painting higher than the man, but above the slaves. And they did it on purpose for 900 years. And they would have statues of Italians stepping on or degrading Irishmen. They call them barbarians, they call them Gauls. They said they spoke Gaelic. They didn't. The Gael means to barbarian, to rampage maniacally. Etymology, root cause meaning of word. So Italians that try to define their victories for 900 years, which is committing genocide, ethnocide, onto the Celtic and Welsh kingdoms and the Irish kingdoms for 900 years. 9 times the hate you've seen now. Think of wars the past 100 years. 9 times the hate for 900 years. They ensured that they put up statues around the rich families of Italy, the rich compounds of Italy, untouched. And they would show off their hate. And then 1,500 years later, we see their artwork on display in history books because it did encapsulate time, but only showed a propagandized version of history through the eyes of genocidal imperialist maniacs, emperors and emperors of Italy, as they try to wreak destruction upon all of Europe. So modern day Spain, did you see today, modern day France? Well, France has changed over the years, but Italy kept, Italians kept holding on to fascism. They did it for 900 years, held on to fascism. You know why you keep hearing about it? Because they keep talking about Roman emperors. Every single Roman emperor was a dictator. Every single Roman emperor was a fascist, white nationalist dictator. That rule in Italy was to ensure that it was only white Italian women and men, specifically white Italian women, as they controlled the families. You will always see, check this out, you will always see Greco-Roman Italian women never in a losing position. I'll explain it again really simply in terms of art history. That just codified their hate. You look at 900 years of Italian art history, for some odd freaking reason, which is pretty plainly evident, you'll never see an Italian woman in a losing position. They try to ensure that it was only white Italian women first, and then white Italian men second. Because white Italian women were okay with letting their men die. And these rich Italian banking families that maintained positions of power ensured that the white Italian women were seen as goddesses and Greek gods, and Greco-Roman gods, and Italian gods, to everyone else, put on a pedestal. And white Italian women for 900 years were okay with the white nationalists and the fascism, as long as the slaves were not of Italian descent. As long as the Irish and Celtic kingdoms, there were statues on their homes that showed them as naked barbarians being stepped upon by imperialist white men. As long as the paintings and the homes that are being seen 1,500 years later show Italian women in a higher position than the men, in a higher position in the paintings than the slaves, they were okay with the hate. Because it gave them power. It gave them white power in Italy. And they codified their hate through their artwork. And while the Irish kingdoms, the Welsh kingdoms, the Celtic kingdoms, and the Irish clansmen, and the Normans, and the Wales, a lot of their history is gone and lost. Because Rome and Italy, and the Roman legionaries, Italian legionaries of white men, invaded Burgundy, modern day Burgundy, invaded modern day France, invaded modern day Germany, invaded modern day United Kingdom, destroyed their culture, destroyed their complete genocide. Roman Italians destroyed their academic facilities, destroyed their hospitals, destroyed their banks, destroyed their homes, destroyed their schools, killed their professors, killed their doctors. So to bring it full circle, you're seeing Italy commit genocide. We're seeing Israel commit genocide. Israel has displaced 2.2 million people. Israel is blocking supplies to feed 1.1 million people. Israel has bombed an area that has killed some 70% women and children. Israel has been in complete fascist control, military dictatorial control of the region of modern-day Palestinians. Modern-day Palestinians have been under prestige, been oppressed for 70-some years. It was like 76 years to be exact. 74, 76 years. It's still been 70-plus years. And in their being oppressed, the numbers state that it's probably like 260,000 to a couple thousand. It's like 265,000 Palestinians have been murdered by Israel in the past 70 years. That's a genocide. That's a genocide. Even over 70 years, and even now in the past 3 months, Israel has dropped more bombs than the U.S. military did in Iraq. Not Afghanistan, and Iraq. Afghanistan and Iraq were two different campaigns. But of the Iraq campaign for a 20-year period, Israel dropped more bombs in 90 days. Israel has killed some 32,400 Palestinians on the ground. 7,000 plus are missing, either buried, and then another 65,000 are wounded. Israel's already killed 33,400, missing 7,000, and they've injured 65,000. So over 100,000 total humans have been either killed, maimed, or injured from Israel in a 90-day period. In 3 months. Atrocious. You know why it's atrocious? Because it's evil, because they're committing genocide. Israel has arrested doctors, which are war crimes. Israel has taken Palestinian civilians as hostage, which are war crimes. They're just rounding up people, putting them in handcuffs, innocent civilians, hurting them off. They forced displacement of people as a war crime. They stopping aid to feed 1 million people is a war crime. It's called collective punishment. Committing collective punishment is a war crime. Blowing up and targeting hospitals. One, Russia, NATO has already classified Russia as committing terrorist acts, but when they destroyed 2,000 plus hospitals, clinics, schools, kindergartens, everything, you know. Because when you take a guided missile and you attack and blow up a Ukrainian kindergarten, that's a war crime. That's not a military target. The kids could not go to school that week. The kids couldn't go to university because the universities were bombed and destroyed. Heck, they couldn't even go to some eastern malls in Ukraine, eastern malls. Ukraine, eastern half of Ukraine, the malls there, because they were bombing and blowing up the malls. Putin, the Russians, the Empire, and Putin were committing terrorist acts. These are not military targets. It's not fighting honorably. When Putin and his troops had initially invaded and they pulled back because they were losing, they would go through and then execute and kill civilians. We find a ton of civilian bodies dead. Just out in the street, on the cars, just dead. As Russian military rolled in and rolled out, they just indiscriminately killed tons of Ukrainian civilians. And I fear that the world doesn't know the evil that Russia has already done in the past 3 years. But Russia has been illegally invaded and getting pushed back, and Ukrainians are fighting for their liberty to free their people. So if we go to, because people just, it's bad. I mean, Ukraine has lost, the number is Ukraine has lost 100,000 people. But Ukraine has lost 100,000 people fighting against Russia over 3 years. And Russia's lost about 350,000, give or take. So the low estimates for Russia is about 320,000. The more accurate numbers about 350,000 Russian soldiers have been killed. That's a lot of brainwashed young men going off to die. Because the Russians, the Empire led by Putin, brainwashed his population by doing the same thing that China does, closed off the population from the rest of the world. So those in Russia are targeted, banned, sent to jail for like 14 days, 30 days, sent to, lose access to the internet. They try and close down the communication for people in Russia to get out. But like liberal people that live in Russia, or like really, pro-democracy forces in Russia, they use a VPN, they find a way to skirt the security, they use burner phones to get onto burner Wi-Fi networks, to like see the outside world, to live. Because that freedom is what we're fighting for. Democracy is what we're fighting for. But just they know, like in Russia, like Russia's the empire. Putin is just like, he's a big Russian mafia like boss, basically. Just mobster boss. But we've already seen Putin's control and power weaken. He's getting old. People think he has cancer. He's gotten slower. At his for his age, for Putin's age, he's gotten slower. They think it's cancer. He's doing all these treatments to try to stay alive. And he's weakened in his power, because when 20,000 men led by a mercenary marched to Moscow, all the Moscow dudes that were loyal to Putin laid down their weapons and didn't want to die and fight for him. Because 20,000 dudes were marching to the Moscow capital. Putin got in a helicopter and fled away. Now, if Putin had stayed, right? Putin had stayed and like rallied his men and then like they fought, they didn't fight. Putin was sitting in Moscow, right? The government and all that. His personal bodyguards and all those people doing his thing. He's probably signing papers. He's like stamping stuff. He's like ensuring someone's talking to him, telling him, hey, this is what this is. He doesn't want to read all of it, so he's trusting his advisor to be like, he's signing and doing his thing. Another person puts a stack of papers in front of him. He's saying, so this is what this is, what's going to do. And he's like, listen to him. He's like, all right, I trust you. Keep doing what you're doing. Moves along. Next thing, he's like, and then another Russian mercenary is moving 20,000 troops with armor and tanks and artillery and helicopters. Like helicopters that are armed to the teeth, tanks, APCs, a whole column is moving towards the capital. And in their wake, imagine you're a Russian soldier, right? Of course they give up. The Russian soldiers, they're seeing this massive convoy, 20,000 men with like thousands of tanks, hundreds of helicopters, supplies, moving up. What is like 30 guys or 500 guys or 1,000 guys going to do against 20,000? So they lay down their weapons and they gave up. Quite literally. I'll say it again. 20,000 dudes marched to the capital, all the posts, all the strongholds, all the forts, all the bases, all the checkpoints, they gave up because they're like, 1,000 of us can't stop 20,000 of these dudes. 100 of us can't stop. 30 guys in a tower can't stop 20,000 dudes. So they put on their weapons and they were just like, they give up. Russia's own soldiers. Because the Russian soldiers weren't brave. They're not brave. They're brainwashed. And they're probably utterly corrupt too. Join the military, Russian military. It's super easy to get paid. They thought they would never have to fight. Right? All these Russian soldiers, I guarantee you, 90% of them, probably 10% probably ready. 90% of them were not ready. And they were rich, and they get paid, and they didn't think they were going to fight anybody. They're not in shape, and they just gave up. And then Putin got in a helicopter and fled. And once he did that,
we saw the reverberating effect. The intel that I've seen shows that middle of Russia and eastern Russia started consolidating power. And the Russian mercenary that got mad, dude's last name started with a P, like Pyrogyzin or whatever, he called them out on social media. This mercenary warlord who's done his own war crimes in the Middle East and in Africa was already was trying to do like a chess move. You know, he went to social media and lambasted these other war generals in Middle Russia because they're a different race. These other war generals that are other Russian war generals that are in Eastern Russia, they're a different race, and they started consolidating power. And we saw this over a 1.5 year period. You watch the intel, you see different reports, but I would look at the intel at least once a week, every 7 days. And I would see a trend. I would take note, like what's happening. So once a week, every Thursday or Friday, just checking the news reports. You know, they're coming out Thursday because stuff happens like Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. What's happening on Thursday, and then check the whole week on Friday, like Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. What's happening with the past 5 days? See what I'm saying? So Thursday was like Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. What's happening in the world? News, local news, world news. You kind of get the beat, the lay of the land. You know, European news, world news, American news, and then Thursday you're kind of, and then Friday I'm always like Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. What's happening throughout the week? So at least twice a week I'm like checking Russian counterintelligence. And for a 1.5 year period, all of a sudden you see this guy, this mercenary goes to social media, and he's mad. He's adamant that other Russian generals of different descent, different race, are holding back M1 supplies. Now, this Russian mercenary who's leading 20,000 men, he can, like, among the sphere of, like, doing evil stuff, can still, leverage and draw his dick in the sand, excuse my language, of trying to request and get more supplies. Because his Russian militaries have committed war crimes, but they've been successful in their military missions. Not to praise the a-hole, because the dude's gone and dead, but committed atrocities in Syria and committed atrocities in African countries. So Pyrogyzin, this warlord, is lambashing and using his weight like a chess move to try to influence the other war generals to basically, hey, give us more ammo, give us more manpower, give us more tanks. Because he could say, Pyrogyzin was saying across the room, you guys are losing, I'm winning. And he was, which was really scary and bad. A lot of the lost battlefield, this back and forth, like, so Ukrainian generals would commit really good plans, commanders would execute them, sergeants on the ground would submit to them, and then Ukrainian troops would win them. And then Pyrogyzin is still a Russian military, but he's still a very powerful, talented tactical warlord. And he would then devise his counterplays, counter-engaging, counterintelligence, like a chess match, and taking some time, and then he'd win his battles. He would dissect the Ukrainian generals, and then submit like a sweeping play, and submit these counterplays, hedge plays, Overwatch plays, and he would start winning battles. And so then he could then have that leverage. And the Ukrainians would then fall back, and then they'd push forward, setting up new lines, artillery forward, pushing them out, and then trying to take back the area. So what you do is, Ukraine, it's classic artillery warfare. You're pushing your opponent out of the positions, putting them into a weakened or disadvantaged position, and then you're moving your troops to take over that new area. And if they can anchor it, then they can launch more, and then move up to another position. That's how you do artillery warfare, to kind of educate the public, people understand. So it's really far-long engagements as a kill zone. So you're trying to do is attack their communication, attack their radar system. They lose the ability to kind of scan the area for sensors. Then you attack their positions, try to push their artillery back, either with special forces or troops on the ground. So you go troops on the ground to push back their artillery. Artillery's like, hey, we're under fire from like grenades or rocket launchers or small vehicles. Artillery backs up. And then when this artillery backs up, your artillery moves in over vast, every 20 or 30 kilometers, you're fighting for space. Every 5, 10, you're fighting, but every 20 for 30 kilometers of space you're trying to fight for. Then your artillery moves up, and then special forces and troops on the ground are like, we have new sights, and then the artillery is now in range because they gained a new position. Then, so you only need to move in like 20 to 30 artillery pieces if you understand artillery warfare. But there's no breaking the line. There's always like 3 lines. There's one back line, it's a safe line. You have the mid line that's secure and getting supplies, and then the front line. People understand that? Everyone's heard of going to the front line. You're at the front line, fighting the front line. The front line is just the 10 to 30 kilometers of warfare. And then there's like the middle line, or that kind of holds everything, supplies, everything's reflowing, injured coming in, new troops are setting up, getting spiked by intel. The mid line is everyone's coming in, and they're geared up, ready to go. So they're rested, they're fresh, get the intel, then lay the land, get all their supplies, and then go off in units. funnel to the front. You're setting in 10 convoy, 40 convoy, 30 convoy. You're bringing in 3,000 more troops. 3,000 troops going in, helicopter escort. And then they put 3,000 more troops in the line, and the 3,000 dudes that have been there for like 30 days are like, all right, hey, I'll take over for detail, take over for the next 90 days. And then they pull back. And so, and they fall back in unison to decompress. So you pull the frontline troops to the midline. The midline's like they get healed, rested. They're not on the front line. Eat food, recoup, mourn, lay the dead, mourn their brothers and sisters, tend to the wounded. Mainly tend to the wounded. 99% of the time, Ukrainians just come back injured, not dying, just come back injured, which is good. So if you send out 10 personnel, 9 of them are coming back fresh, 1 person injured, or 2 or 3 people are injured, 7 are coming back. They're just shell shocked, tired, drained, the cold, the frigid, the warfare, the gunfire. And then they get their refresh. And when they get back to the back line, give them more support. They usually run to family. Family's hugging them, taking pictures. And sometimes they're like, hey, I gotta see my friend, that's over here at this camp. He's injured, and I'm the only person that can be here. His family he left Ukraine, so then they'll hug and kiss and all that, and be like, go do your thing. And then the dude leaves the back line, goes back to the midline, meets up with his friend who's still in like a triage. Because he knows his family's not here, he's the only dude here. They're like from the same city, fighting for the country. And then Russia, the Russian Empire has lost 350,000 people, 3 to 1 ratio. With 100,000 Ukrainians that have died valiantly serving and protecting their nation, liberating their people, freeing their people from Russian control. The Russian Empire, total opposite. Women and men they're crying. I mean, the Russian families are crying. They're grieving. They've already seen radio chatter, counterintelligence chatter, gathering intelligence from unencrypted, messages from Russians. The reason this is important, people are like, why would we tune into that? So our NATO intelligence and Ukrainian intelligence, of course, is to intercept these cell phone calls from Russians as they call back home. And we're just trying to hear what they're saying to see if they're getting anything encrypted out, if they're saying any kind of secrets out. But also, you just see a lot of sad stories. You see the discourse, you see the wane, you see the weakness, the troubled mind. You hear the distraught. Basically, they're afraid and scared. A lot of these Russian men were lied to. We constantly saw that in the first 9 months of the war, first 12 months of the war. Every 3 months, we saw the intel. Every 4 months, we saw the intel that Russian men would they're freaking out. They would give up. They don't mind being pals because they were training, and then someone said they would lie to. They'd be in their green fatigue. They were training. The exact same story kept happening over and over again. The Russian military just does this to their own men, to their own people. They lie to them. They gathered them up, said, hey, you're training. They would tell the Russian men, this is what they do in Russia, tell the Russian men, hey, you're not going to war. They lie to their face. They gaslight them. They tell them, hey, you're just training. And they would lie to the Russian men, telling them, hey, NATO's here to get you. These Nazis in Ukraine come to get you, which is a lie. And they're lying to these Russian men. They would tell them that Ukraine is controlled by Nazis, which they're not. It's the lie that Russia would say to them, brainwash them. They would train them and tell them, hey, you're just going here to train, to be ready. Because you're not going to the front line, you're just going to train. And then these pals have already repeated these stories. Because they've all been lied to. All these Russian pals, every single man said they thought they were fighting Nazis. When they finally fought, they're like, these aren't Nazis, they're just Ukrainians. They thought NATO was here to get them. We're not. NATO hasn't attacked anybody. You can see no trend of Russian pals saying they thought they were fighting against Nazis, and they realized these are just our Ukrainian, brothers and sisters that speak Ukrainian and Russian like they do. They're like, these aren't Russian, these aren't Nazis. Like their own government lied to them. And then they realized, well, NATO's not here. NATO's not coming for them. NATO's not attacking them. Russia lied to him a second time. And then Russia lied to him a third time, saying, hey, you're just training, you're not going to the front lines. And then we send them to the front lines. So there's a continuing trend that we saw from Russian pals. But people haven't actually sat and listened to Russian pals and seen the continual trend that we saw in these 3 years of the warfare as Ukraine is liberating their land and Russia is losing a 3-1 battle. So when anybody else, if you don't know this, no one cares about your feelings. Facts are facts. So Russia's lost 320,000 minimum, 350,000 top baseline intel. There's always discrepancy, but it's 300,000 plus if you want to just disregard 50,000 lives. There's 320,000 minimum, about 350,000 max. Discretion to the wise on how many Russian soldiers, Russian Z soldiers, they've been lied to that have died. Young men, 18, 19, in the 20s, some in the 30s, some in the 40s, some in the 50s, but a lot of young men not to die. They're brainwashed their whole lives. They're 18 or 19. They don't know the world. They don't have access to the internet. They're a firewall. They're under a Russian warlord in the middle of Russia. They don't see the outside world. Sent off on a lie to die. All for one Russian mafia warlord boss, war criminal, and Putin. And Putin already has the title of war criminal. I don't have to repeat myself. I believe the ICC and Hague and all those people have already classified Putin and Russia as like a terrorist state. They lose certain access to funding, and that Putin is a war criminal already. Like certified science still delivered from a whole bunch of countries. Even my bad, even more. It was like I think it was 140 countries or something like that. 141 countries. The vast majority of the world might have been 151. There's only like 27 countries like side of Russia or something like that, and like a few of like the 187, 108 countries in the world or something like that. And some countries don't even deserve the title of being a country. They're like, so small, such small population. Like you're just a state that wanted to break off from like another country. Sorry, disrespect, but all the disrespect because I'm like Montenegro, like bro, you're not a country, man. You're like broke off from like the region as a state. It'd be like Milan. Like if Milan wanted to just like separate. Like in Italy, like they just didn't want to. Whatever. They call themselves like Mount Black. They had killed so many slaves to build their wealth that it's Montenegro. What? Huh? Yeah, because they changed their name like 3 times. Montenegro, Montenegra. I believe it used to be called Mount Schwarz, right? It used to be called Monte Schwarz. Schwarz just means black in German. Because they had killed so many black people to build their wealth. So yeah, it should probably lose the title of country and be kicked from the UN from the wealth they've generated off of slavery and genocide. But that's just me. So all the due disrespect, the country that generated tens of billions of dollars of wealth off of destruction, killing of my people, committing evil acts. So yeah, they can have all the disrespect. So the Russians, the empire, Putin keeps his warlords in general through blackmail and counter blackmail. He would expose them to Russian prostitutes and put his men in nefarious positions to which everything's recorded and taken capture of, so that these men now lose face value among their peers of other warlord generals. They would lose all kind of standing and respect. That's what Putin does. He does it so well because he's been doing it for a long time. And he basically just Putin keeps dirt and everyone around him so they can always keep them kind of check and balance. And they're all corrupt too, so they all play along. But I still get paid. Well, I don't get exposed for my whatever that Putin has dirt on him about. That's how he maintains power. But we saw him lose his power. So the whole point I'm getting at is 2 points. Russia's committing terrorist acts. We call them terrorist state. Putin's now certified war criminal. But when Netanyahu the dictator Netanyahu, when he does the exact same thing to Palestinians, for some reason the U.S. government has abstained proper vestiges to being human right. Right? Like we're going to keep human rights values here in the United States, right? But we're not going to promote the human rights value of Palestinians. Israelis have, for 70 years, killed 265,000 plus Palestinians. It's genocide, ethnocide. They have destroyed so many homes. They've displaced 2.2 million people. Actively, there's war crime from Israel. Israel has stopped the supply of food and water to 1.1 million people. Collective punishment is also war crime. They bombed other hospitals and churches and mosques and ancient buildings that have been there for hundreds of years. Israel is just non-military targets. Non-military targets. The Pope made a giant stern letter. He's mad that his own parish, some Catholic nuns and Christian missionaries were killed by Israeli snipers. multiple women. There were like Catholic nuns, other women that were of Christian, of the parish. There's Christian ethnicity, but of the parish, and children like shot and sniped by Israeli snipers. And Israel would attack refugee camps. They would tell Palestinians to move to this area, and they would start. And once people set up camps and tents, and they would start bombing it, killing a whole bunch of more civilians. A whole bunch of people were at a hospital. Israel would start bombing around the hospital, killing all the people that were in tents around the hospital, committing war crimes. And Israel would bomb the hospital, killing more Palestinians. So it injured women and children because 70% of it's like 72% or something. 72% of everyone that's in Palestine is women and children. They're just kids, they're teenagers. I mean by women and kids, like literally women and kids, like the defenseless. 70 is like 72%. So when Israel's bombing hospitals or bombing tents, they're killing more innocent Palestinian children and women. Only like 28% of the total population of Palestine is men. So every time they were dropping bombs, they killed 10 people. 7 of them are children, like kids under 16, 17 years old. A lot of them. 5-year-olds, 3-year-olds, 7-year-olds, 10-year-olds, 12-year-olds, 13-year-olds, 14-year-olds getting killed, getting injured, limbs blown off, eyes missing. Israel's taking a complete military, heavy armor, special forces, guided missile satellites, and they're targeting and killing civilians. Now, the Biden administration has failed all of humanity because you cannot extend human rights values here in the United States and be a part of these human rights groups while you are, as this administration is giving weapons and bombs to Israel, and they're using our U.S.-made weapons to kill and target civilians. When Gaddafi did that, he was labeled a terrorist. We helped the rebels on the ground, liberated the people, and even known people revolted and fought in Libya. When Ukraine, back in 2011, fought for the civil war for the pro-democracy forces, it was Lukashenko, right? I think Yanukovych too, right? That was using their military, Ukrainian military, then kill their own civilians. And then once the Ukrainian civilians in 2010, in this kind of early parts of the civil war Ukraine, in 2011, parts of early civil war Ukraine, too many civilians were dying, and they rallied together, and they overthrew the fascist dictatorial control that Ukraine used to have. And in that resounding revolution for pro-democracy, the vast majority of Ukrainians realized, hey, they're fighting for a multi-racial, multicultural, multi-ethnic, just, noble society. Democratic constitutional republic. And Ukraine has stood tall since the past 10 years. You technically say since 2011, but I'll probably say 2014. It stood tall. You know why I say 2014? Because that was the beginning of the Russian invasion of Ukraine. Ukrainians understand this. I understand this. I see their plight. Another song. Another struggle. So for 10 years, they've been fighting this war. For 10 years, they've been fighting against the Russian Z Empire. And the reason it's Russian Z, because everywhere you look across Russia, you see the Z symbol. The Z symbol is being tatted. The Z symbol is being painted on everything. Putin is using the Russian Z symbol to galvanize his people to fight against NATO. But right now, he's rallying his people behind the Russian Z banner, this fascist, ethno-white nationalist state, and attacking anyone and everything that is of not like white Russian descent, design, through their hate. And they think of Ukrainians because the Russian Z Empire, the root cause of it is been like this for a long time. But it's for Putin, it's to make sure that his fascist military control, his mafia state, it stays white Russian. This ethnic white Russian. Because the moment Ukraine had a democracy in place and overthrew his puppet dude, the people of Ukraine, you had a ton of black Americans coming in, black Americans coming in, Africans coming in, you had some Indians coming in to Ukraine, and they'd study, be teachers, have wives, have kids. It was growing. Latinos coming in, Europeans coming in, Americans coming in to Ukraine, and we're seeing Ukraine a great place, great place. You saw art, academics, people making music, rock music, R&B music, jazz, becoming mechanics, becoming artists, just becoming farmers too. Literally, Americans are coming over to Ukraine and they start farming. Ukraine has great e-sport athletes, great Olympians, Olympian women too, Olympian men too, Philippines, and but Ukraine, because it was being a democracy, because it was being open, with their love, being liberal. That was the main cause of Putin's hate. Putin was like, he saw in his hate, which is misguided, evil, he saw Ukrainians mixing and intermingling in a country that was bringing in other people that weren't white Ukrainian. Because a part of Putin's hate is his lineage. A long time ago, it was either his grandmother on his father or mother's side, but one of his grandmothers is Ukrainian. And so Putin thinks of himself as part Ukrainian and part Russian. And at one point, to bring y'all full circle and educate y'all, Kiev was the heart and capital of all the culture of the Slavic people. Okay? Because Ukrainians speak a different language, a different culture, and Russians speak a different language and a different culture. But check this out. You could also say like Ukrainians are like, they're the artists of the Slavic nation. They were the more nobles, prince and princesses, valiant soldiers all throughout the years. They've been told the stories of basically the best Slavic soldiers and resistance fighters that fought against Nazi Germany came from Ukraine. The heroic value of Ukrainians, of Ukrainian sniper women, Ukrainian sniper men, and Ukrainian soldiers in general. A valiant effort during World War II to liberate their people, leading the resistance to the Slavic nations against Nazi Germany. And tons of Ukrainian Jews and tons of Ukrainians know the horrors of their country being ravished by Nazi Germany, being invaded and controlled by Nazi Germany, being colonized by Nazi Germany, and having their culture and the people being killed, executed. So tons of Jewish Ukrainians and tons of people that feel the plight and the sorrow and the grieving with other Jewish Ukrainians understand. And even any family member that like helped a Jewish Ukrainian person was like killed, executed, buried, gone, houses burned down. So even if you're a good Ukrainian and you try to help a Jewish Ukrainian during Nazi Germany occupation, they suffered the punishment too. See what I'm saying? And so Ukraine now is a just, noble, multicultural, liberal society. It's a democratic constitutional republic. And that's where Putin was hate came from. Putin in his hate would attack the very center of the arts, like opera, singing, music, culture, academics of Kiev, Slavic heart of like artistry. He would attack the capital, beautiful like artisan city, because his hate is more so embedded in, he sees Ukraine, not just because of democracy, but also because of people of color that are walking, intermingling, and mixing with Slavic people, because he himself is just another white nationalist, fascist pig. That's Putin. And Putin's losing power because he's getting old. Current intel is we believe he's doing experimental stuff to stay alive. He has cancer, he has something that's like hurting him. And he is, the inside intel is basically he's constantly like 3 to 4 times a day getting treatment. So, if you can dissect that and discern that he's basically like doing everything he can, with experimental stuff. Maybe they're doing some modern medicine stuff, but experimental stuff to like stay alive is what Putin is doing. Like doing a whole bunch of experimental medical stuff to like stay alive. Think like Star Wars, like the Emperor, or whatever. You know what I mean? Kind of like that. Because check this out. The reason we understand this intel is that a lot of the times, 99% of the times, they're all acting. It's all a play. So anytime you see Putin, okay, the like 100 people around him, or 200 people around him, or 1,000 people around him, they're among like his million of loyal followers that wear sleeves that have orange and black stripes. They're like his inner circle, like a million of them. And 900,000 to 1.2 million, give or take. I believe the numbers are 900,000 to 1.2 million. But so then we round out at being he has a million loyalists. Wherever he does any kind of thing, it's just those people. People are like, what? He has a million loyal followers. So if he has a stadium with 50 to 80,000 people, guess what? It's not the Russian people. It's all fake. It's all an act. It's his 50,000, 80,000 he can gather is of his a million people that are loyalists. And guess what? They all get paid. They're the most staunch, like pro-fascist Russian, pro-military Russian, pro-like white power Russian. His million strong. They all get paid, and they love it. They're like they get to revel in their hate. They love that. They get to revel in their hate, their white Russian hate for any other race. They get all this power, fame, money. Russian prostitutes or Russian money. The Russian women that are among his million could fly around the world and continue to project out Russia as like they're the soft power. Okay. They can continually talk positive of a country that is economically crushed and has lost 350,000 troops. And the Russian men and women can then fill up a stadium, get paid, and cheer, and continue to be next to the man that's giving them this lifestyle. So of the million loyalists of Putin, he is their king or their emperor or whatever. But he's still a white nationalist, fascist pig. That's hate. And Middle Russia, they've been brainwashed. We see this time and time again. We've seen tons of news crews go into Middle Russia. We're talking the occult people. Okay. The occult people. And interviewing them. Everywhere from Vice to BBC News to CNN, MSNBC. Pick a news company. Washington Post. And they've, New York Times, pick a news company. And they've gone in, interviewed these people. And how they look at it, they've been brainwashed their whole lives. They're just like, they call it like NATO's encroachment. They look at it like, NATO's here to take our land. NATO's here to invade my people. So they're like, they look over and they're like, Putin is brainwashed and telling them, I need to stand up and fight for my country. So then the occult people in the middle of Russia, a lot of them, tens of millions of them, they don't know any better. Same kind of closed loop network, same kind of closed firewall, don't have access to the outside world, everything's limited, information control at the state level, in the country level, and the government level. So you have the government, state, and control, and county all controlling info coming in and out. They're just being fed lies their whole lives. They believe Russia, Putin, they look at Putin as the strong man that's protecting the nation versus NATO's encroachment. Putin is supposed to be the pillar to stop NATO from taking their land and their people. Because he wants to take the land of the people. Remember, every projection is a confession with these strong men. So let me democratize the world, which will probably make it easier for you to understand. So now you understand why Putin invaded. Now you see the hate that he's committing. But I'm mostly disappointed because basically, what we see resounding, everyone stands with Palestine. I love to see it. It's the good of nature of humanity in the face of evil. You see the good in the face of humanity. The vast majority of the world, everyone from the vast majority of Americans to the vast majority of French people, to the vast majority of Europeans, to the vast majority of the world sees the evil that Israel's committing. We see the evil that Putin is committing. So I'm glad in that part. But basically, it's really just like the U.S. government is not with their people, and the UK government is not with their people. The vast majority of the UK people see Palestine, anyone with a decent heart. But I'm glad that the grandmothers and the mothers and the daughters in UK, like, they see the children dying in Palestine by Israel guns, weapons, bombs, and their protests constantly are applying pressure on the UK government. And here in the United States, we had over 380,000, damn near 400,000 people march on the Capitol to call for a ceasefire against Israel. And we've had tens of millions of people march in a short amount of time in the past 90 days, calling for a ceasefire, calling for a ceasefire, calling for a ceasefire, calling for a ceasefire, calling for a ceasefire. And the U.S. government can enact that ceasefire. So anytime you see these other American white nationalist sympathizers try to spew some counterintelligence bullshit, it's super easy to supersede, incredibly easy to front and confront. They're not that bright. They're not that smart. And this is the line they use. They can be easily refuted. You can comment against them. These white national sympathizers that are American will say, what's a very common thing they say? They'll say something stupid like, they'll say something like, Biden's not in charge of Israel, or something like that. They'll say something fucking stupid. Something so fucking asinine is showing their fucking intelligence, their lack of intelligence. And gaslight people thinking that we're just as stupid as they are. No. You then talk of a fool. Is that NATO only moves if the U.S. moves. NATO only moves if the U.S. moves. Everyone puts in like 3.5% security insurance. All of our NATO nations put in like either 2.33 or like 3.5%. I think some NATO countries put in like 4.8%. My bad commitment to NATO. But wherever the U.S. moves, our forces, our power, our naval fleets, our air force, our marines, our manpower, our person power, wherever we move, the rest of NATO follows. So all these white national sympathizers are just showing their lack of intelligence. Basically, you tell them, well, the U.S. government, with Biden, whatever his administration does, NATO follows. People don't understand that. Because if France wanted to do good, right, French people are usually up for this fight. The French people who are, like the American people, the vast majority of us, are staying with Palestine. We see their suffering in the past 70 years. We've seen genocide the past 90 days. You can even say genocide the past 70 years, but genocide the past 90 days. Russian people are up for this fight. They could force the Russian government to send in their forces, blockade and surround Israel, tell Israel basically stand down. And then I guarantee you other NATO countries would also follow suit. And as all the other NATO countries would move their fleets forward, and their air force and all their pilots would be standby, going in circles, flying in the air, ramping up. And I need to give the vision to all the Zoomers, everyone that's younger than me. In a 24-hour period, hell, in a 12 hours to 24-hour period, all of NATO could just shut down and stop Israel. 12, 18, 24-hour tops. Probably 12 hours fastest, 18 hours, okay, probably 24 hours tops. But all it would take would be France, Germany, Poland, Spain, Italy, England, and the other kind of players to move their naval fleets forward and surround and blockade Israel, dumb stand down. Because nothing's getting through a NATO blockade. and every other African country, every Middle Eastern country just would like put their hands up and start walking backwards. So first it starts with the French people pushing their French government to do this. But also it'd be nice if the Biden administration would have already convened Congress and told them to sever the ties with Israel. Israel should no longer be considered an ally committing genocide. Okay? Israel's dropped more bombs than we have in Iraq. Israel in a 90-day period has killed nothing but 72% of the individuals are women and children being murdered. Innocent peoples. 72% of women and children being murdered. Israel. So Biden administration should have already convened Congress, drafted the paper and legislation, signed it and sealed it to end the alliance with Israel. Because they've already done the collective punishment. There's no waiting. Anytime this Biden administration tells you, Biden administration, their intel's on top of intel. Their intel's on top of intel. Okay? White House knows what's happening actually all around the world at all times. CIA, FBI know what's happening all around the world at all times because they have to. It's their counterintelligence. So all my other U.S. government officials are just doing this. They're like, and they're just doing their work, but they're kind of like, they're definitely looking over at the White House, like disappointed what the hell's going on. Guarantee it. If good, just, honest people sitting there, sifting through all this intelligence, and they're just like, in their gut, I already tell you right now, the vast majority of Americans are like, dude, why are we even still supporting Israel? Guarantee you, the vast majority of our military, they're anti-fascists, are looking over at Biden like, bro, Israel's fascist as hell. Why are we helping them? Israel has taken innocent Palestinian children, abducted them with their police forces and with their military, and they're in prisons. We have no idea what's happening to them. We see some communication of Palestinian families with children, teenagers, and children that are in prison in Israel, abducted and taken against their will. And now we see it today, the past 90 days, Israel taking tens of thousands of Palestinians, forcing them into concentration camps in Israel. You know what's happened. Israel, like I said, has already bombed hospitals, war crimes in Israel. Already bombed and killed doctors, war crimes. They've bombed and attacked and destroyed innocent journalists. Over like, the minimum number was like 110 UN workers, United Nations workers. They have like white symbols of blue, bright vests, like 110 plus United Nations workers killed by Israel. You can't mess that up. The number's too high. It's systemic and targeted. Even when other American news crews are there, their convoys and their news vans are getting attacked and missiled and bombed and shot at from Israel. The more war crimes. Israel was going about in a systematic way committing evil by trying to stop and kill international journalists, destroying international news vans. They've already blown up and targeted the AP News building. Israel used the same propaganda and lie, saying there's a Hamas base underneath the AP News building. I 100% guarantee you the AP News building that journalists from all over the world were like, they were doing so with their work. They were documenting all the war crimes. And Israel realized, well, no one's going to stop us. Israel realized no one's going to stop them. So they just made up a lie and then blew up and attacked the AP News building. Destroyed it, detonated it. It was a massive building. It was like 15, 20 stories tall. Had international news journalists, like servers, newsroom, reports. And I guarantee you, with a hunch of mine, right, if I was to dissect it, that basically the AP News was probably about to break some like major bombshell thing that would have like shattered the Israel government to its core, exposed them for some even more evil stuff that they're doing. And Israel had to make up a lie. There was a Hamas base underneath it and an attack and blow it up. The same thing with the hospitals in Palestine. Every single American news organization would state, for the record, hey, look, Russia's showing video, but we can't corroborate the stories that they're saying. Consistently seen in the past 90 days. Every single main American news broadcast, the major ones, would all say in unison, hey, look, Russia's showing this video, they're saying intel, we can't corroborate. Those are just propagandic lies that Israel was using. Israel would say that there was Hamas underneath the hospital. Like the same thing they said, there's a Hamas base underneath AP News building, and they blew it up. But the very act that they did that shows their war crime. To the whole world. Israel cannot gaslight the whole world of crime. And I'll explain it really simple that people don't understand. If there was a Hamas base underneath the AP News building, guess what? The only person that would blow it up would be Hamas. But Hamas didn't because there was no base underneath the AP News building. Okay? Check out why. If there was a base underneath the AP News building, Israel, if they wanted the respect of the world, which they don't, because they're committing genocide for 70 years, they would have sent in their troops and special forces and stopped the news building. They would have shown the evidence, right? Israel would have shown the evidence, gathered the world's support, and put pressure on the AP News people to expose what they already have. But it was never there. It was a lie. Honestly, I'm 100% win rate. I'm 140K. So checkmate, motherfuckers. Israel, if there was, this happened years ago, they keep repeating the same lies. These fascist, white nationalist governments, they're not that bright. Inherently stupid. Strong men use the weak men. Very stupid. Very much. Very stupid. With their hate. Israel they should have sent in special forces. They could send in their own journalists. They want to do soft power. They would have sent in their journalists, and they would have presented the evidence. Right? They would have presented the evidence and really put pressure on AP News teams to be like, you have a base of Hamas underneath your building. But they didn't. The very fact that they fired a missile from long range and then killed those people and blew up the building shows Israel's war crime. Because the most likely scenario, the logical scenario, was that the AP News teams, all the international journalists, were about to break some massive story. Israel had done something even more evil that they've already done. Okay? They didn't. So it exposes and destroys all the Israeli lives. If Israel wanted to do soft power, same thing again. I'll explain to you again. They did it again years later to three different Palestinian hospitals. Israel would say the same stupid fucking lie. These fascist cucks. There's a Hamas base under the hospital. And then a resounding, all of our U.S. news networks in the past 90 days, all our media would say, we cannot corroborate the intel, the lies, the propaganda that Israel's saying. And then Hamas hasn't really done anything. The past 90 days, what has Hamas done? They haven't done anything. The past 90 days, Hamas hasn't done anything. But Israel, on the other hand, Palestinian people are dying. 72% children, 3 years old, 4 years old, 5 year old, 7-year-old, eyes gone, legs are gone. Innocent civilians, 16-year-olds, 13-year-olds, 14-year-olds, blown up, dead, bombs, dead. Catholic women sniped by Israeli snipers. Christian women at the parish sniped and killed by Israeli snipers. What is that? Those are not military targets. Okay? Just pure evil. First, it started years ago. It's been like this for 7 years. It even started years ago when I saw an Israeli sniper fired around through the neck of a child, and the child lives. Thank fucking God. Those were already the instances of the evil. So other White Houses years ago saw this. The White House in the United States, or whatever administration in power, we have a beat and intel on all the countries in the world. Okay? So years ago, and it's been like 70 years, Israelis would abduct children in Palestine and put them into concentration camps in Israel. Or like I said, Israeli snipers would shoot Palestinian medics, try to kill them and injure them. More war crimes. But it's been like that for years. Israeli sniper, like I said, fired around, went to the neck of a small kid, Palestinian kid. He lived. Thank fucking God. But those were already instances of like the U.S. and NATO should have already applied sanctions years ago to Israel. And the same Netanyahu government. And they did it twice. They did it 3 times the past 90 days. They would say, there's a Hamas base under the hospital. There's no Hamas base under the hospital. They blow up the tents and targets and kill more refugees, and they blow up the hospital and apprehend their doctors and women. Israel did another war crime, and Guardian News broke it, where Israel sent in the special forces dressed as Palestinians and then abducted the doctors and then killed more Palestinians and then stole them. Literal video footage, Guardian News showcases Israeli special forces dressed up as Palestinians going in. The Israelis would take off the outfits and the fake beards and everything, fake outfits, and they were in the military fatigues, and they would kill Palestinians on video camera at the hospital, and then they would apprehend and abduct and kidnap all the doctors and anyone of importance, and then they would take them out, and then Israel would say, "Oh, there's a Hamas base under the hospital, which doesn't exist, which is a fucking lie," to continue their evil, and then would bomb both the hospital. So like now, all 3 major hospitals are gone in Gaza Strip, but of Palestine, the country nation of Palestine, the 3 major hospitals in Gaza are gone because of the continued war crimes to Israel. Weak fascists or nationalist cucks continue to do the same thing with their hate. Repeat the same fictitious propaganda to commit their evil acts. But I know the French people are in for the fight. The French people are always badass. Want to fight for democracy. The reason I know this is because over the past, 20 years in Iraq, a resounding chorus of respect from all of our Air Force, Army, Marines, Navy would say, French are probably like our number 2 fighting force. Huge fucking respect. Sorry, all of our NATO allies, but U.S. we're number 1, of course, with our military and fighting. But like number 2 is like France. The windmen to represent France. They're pro-democracy to the heart, to the core. Pro-democracy, anti-fascist from the beginning. The very motherland and fatherland, heartland, the heartland of democracy comes out of France. The beating drum of democracy. They're always in it for the fight. For freedom. Liberté. Justice. What is there's a saying in France. I'm trying my best to try to remember. I think it's Vive la France. What they're getting at is for the Republic, for liberty, for the people, freedom. In America, what toppled the white American Empire were my ancestors. Black Americans said, may freedom ring true. To our American civic way. It is not history. It is our human story. It is not history. It is our human story. In America, the continual fight for American democracy stems from Black Americans, African Americans, enslaved Americans, carving out freedom for everyone else. It was our collective black leaders fighting for civil rights for 400 years. Do we have freedom today? It wasn't until the movement explained to people to understand our history, human history. It took black civil rights leaders to march 1 million people onto Washington, D.C. so we can force Lyndon B. Johnson to have the civil rights. So that women, men, people of color, everyone of color in America are black leaders that organized and marched. Or black women in pastors and churches organized and marched. That led tens of millions. The number is supposed to be like 100 million or something, like 80 to 100 million people got to the streets. Got to the streets in America, not just the million plus that went to Washington, D.C. Okay? And in that act, it wasn't until 1968, until now, have we had a democracy in America. That's why white Americans are so misguided. They're used to 400 years of a white American empire, not realizing that since 1968 until now, we've been democracy. So he's thinking Putin as another racist, white nationalist, fascist cuck. He's using his power because he hates the fact that Ukraine became a democracy on his doorstep. And he lost his puppet vassal leader. The problem is, if the vast majority of Israelis were pro-democracy, they would have already revolted and had a revolution. The moment their military dictator started killing innocent civilians. The thing that I fear is, I don't see Israel, like Ukraine, seeing a brutal. Ukraine had, I think it was Lukashenko, whatever it was. He was another white nationalist fascist dictator, using his military to kill civilians, and then Ukraine revolted, and then the democracy force now the past since 2014, 10 years. To bring full circle to people that didn't understand, the 2014 reference in Ukraine is, the Civil War happened in 2010, 2011, but it wasn't until Russia attacked Ukraine that their stalwart democracy and defense stood tall. And then democracy's been in place for the past 10 years in Ukraine. Good people. Once Ukraine has Americans now can, everyone that's pro-democracy forces can still visit Ukraine, just, go through some training and precautions to understand missile sirens and all that. But you can definitely support Ukraine by being a tourist in Ukraine right now. You travel to Ukraine and spend your money, donate your time to build supply kits in Ukraine. Help as much as you can, rebuild schools and buildings. You know, if you don't want to fight in Ukraine, that's fine. You can always ship to Ukraine, and if you have a medical background, that helps a ton. If you don't mind being a field medic, um, you know, in the back line, the midline, you won't be in the front line, back line, midline. Only like trained uh, forces go to the front line. And for Ukraine, they've been an incredible stalwart. The next NATO force to join us, next NATO country to join us, because they've collectively done great justice and honor by keeping the POWs of Russia, keeping them fed and contained via our own Geneva Convention, the kind of POW rights and all that. So Russian soldiers that are captured as POWs get 3 meals a day, and they get a warm room. They'd be in a prison cell, but it was better than how their own government treats them. And know that in Ukraine, for all of the world, we have a ton of international volunteer fighters of the tens of thousands that are there. Like there's already 7,000 plus minimum, 7,000 plus minimum Americans that have volunteered their time to go into Ukraine and fight for their country, fight for democracy, fighting the good fight, for liberté, for freedom, for justice, for people. And so I know France is up for the fight. I just need the French people to push their government to send in their military to surround blockade Israel. And if France does it right with their leadership, they could really come out on top as top dogs. Because I already know France, like just the people and the government, they want to be the spearhead of NATO. They want to be kind of like they want to be the power player. Not power. They want to be the cool kid. They want to be. France knows they're number 2 to the United States, but it's because of like the United States, like the moves we've made over the past since World War II, has always been kind of second place because of Black American fighter pilots and Black American Army infantry, ground infantry, and Latino American ground infantry helped liberate and save all of Europe. It was all Black fighter squadrons that didn't lose a single bomber, and those bombers dropped their bombs on the valuable Nazi targets. It was our Black American fighter pilots that destroyed Nazi German fighter pilots because white American fighter pilots were getting their ass whooped, and white British fighter pilots were getting their ass whooped, and British, UK, British, and French fighter pilots were getting their ass whooped. But it wasn't until Black American fighter pilots showed up. We just were like, our jokers must be funny. Because who are like the better athletes with like the faster eyes, the faster reaction time. Innately, it'll be Black Americans. And also African fighters, just in general. Even if you're in a tank, even if you're a pilot of an aircraft, even if you're in a tank or pilot of an aircraft, or even if you're on the ground fighting, ground infantry are all Black Army infantry units, are all Black Marine infantry units, are all Black Army Air Corps fighter pilots, predates the Air Force, went in, and there was a group called I think it was called like the New York Hellfighters or something like that. New York Hellfighters were all Black ground infantry unit, and they were basically like they never lost. If there was Nazi Germans that were fighting in entrenched position, Nazi Germans that were like too tough to take down, because basically like the white British people can do it, white Americans can do it, their units can do it. They would then, it's all about glory. So I'll explain you the racism in World War II. White American British folks would get first shot and they would fail. Okay, you couldn't get the glory. French would kind of go second. Some Polish resistance, German resistance, other Spanish resistance, and Italian resistance would go then second, third. If they couldn't get the glory, they couldn't free this area of the city, then they would fall back to like, all right, let the Black Americans do it. They were so disgusted in their hate, the racism, the segregating units, that the Brooklyn Hellfighters would go in and just take it that day, 3 hours. You'd win the glory, get the medals, get the recognition. People are like, what? Field commanders would promote and give medals and to frontline troops because morale up. And so every unit was like fighting out there, like, what is glory? Getting a silver star or a bronze star or getting the Medal of Honor. That's glory. In a good way, as they were fighting to liberate Europe. Same thing happening in the racism in World War II. I'll explain it really simple. The British would get to fly in first of their fighter pilots against Nazi fighter pilots. They would lose. They'd scatter and back up. Then the French would do the thing. Spanish would do the thing, and then American men would do the thing. They would go in, then second and third and fourth, they'd get a shot at trying to take out Russian airfield sorties to win back space. And then eventually they'd be like, hey, we can't do it this week or this day. And they would allow an all-black fighter squadron, the 333rd or 332nd. And they would go in and they would take the airspace. Be the best fighters on the planet. I mean, y'all know this. Who have faster reflexes. Or black American men. Also Africans too. But and through those vestiges and victories, like I said, all black fighter squadrons didn't lose zero bombers. Basically, we're like kicking the shit out of Nazi Germany in the air. And then once we had air superiority, then the rest of the ground troops moved forward. So with Russia, Putin knows he's losing. Ukraine, they're liberating their people slowly, taking back land slowly. Ukrainian special forces are destroying. Let's see what time it is, because I have laundry I need to do. It's 1:21. 1 hour and 21 minutes. Should be. What's it called? What's it called? It's for posterity. It's the 4th of February. 2024. Just note to self, posterity, 4th February 2024. It is now 5 a.m. 5 a.m. We are 1 hour, basically 22 minutes. Record. Teach a little art history too, because we want another art history. So yeah. So France must be the cool kids. I'll sum it up as quick as I can. France must be the cool kids. They would need to gather the other NATO allies, all reaffirm their human rights kind of pledges, civil rights kind of pledges, and France would become the cool kid because they can. They're number 2 like fighting force in the world, women and men, and can rally the other NATO pro-democracy forces, moving with multiple fleets, giant contingency force, and then surround and blockade Israel. And basically, French government should essentially tell U.S. government, tell the Biden administration and the U.S. military, get the hell out of the way, because we're coming in here to stop a genocide. And they would be sailing by and flying by with discerned, disgusted looks, because the Biden administration. So the key move from France would be to influence British Parliament, UK Parliament, pretty much British Parliament, if you want to get into more politics. The French government, Spanish government, German government, Polish government, all of our NATO allies, Italian government. Because you know what it is? Trust me, they see it. They're just super disappointed in Biden. Biden has spent 4 years flying to in and out of Israel. So for him, I think, for Biden, I think it's just a sunk cost fallacy. He's just invested so much time to a country. I don't understand why Biden doesn't see the fact that Israel has failed him, not the other way around. Biden's thinking of his commitment as, all of this back and forth between him and his families and flying to Israel thinking that, I guess, Israel at one point was a democracy in the region. But Israel has, to bring full circle, Israel has stripped away positions of power that can keep the checks and balances on any kind of dictatorship. Israel could try to act like they're a democracy, they're not. Netanyahu, his previous all powerful government, just went in and started removing any kind of checks or balances to his executive branch. And we see that with every single dictator. We see it with every single dictator. Past 200 years, 400 years, doesn't matter. It's very classic. Consolidate the executive power, strip away any kind of checks or balance. But the problem that I don't see is I don't see Israel, their peoples, rising up in a revolution to fight for democracy. So it would take NATO, led by the cool kids, France, to get some stuff done. 1 hour and 26 minutes, 5 o'clock in the morning, and actually I have laundry I need to do, so I keep the stream going, but I should probably end it here. There's an ad break. Oh, ad break is in progress, so yeah. But yeah, this is where we are at. One thing that's important is it's a battle of Palestinians that you see their suffering, you see their plight, you see their grievance. I need Palestinians, people of Gaza, Gazians, and the vast world sees what's happening. We will get justice. We will get justice. There's time. And U.S. governments and administrations are always temporary. Okay, I mean, thank goodness that their 4 years as presidency with this freaking admin, and then they fucking failed all of humanity. And for Palestinians to understand, to kind of reach across Palestinians and Gazians, reach them to hopefully understand, because they're trying to understand, I think, because they don't know, guessing, but I'm probably 100% correct. Gazians, Palestinians don't know the Black American struggle. Understand your suffering. We see your suffering. Understand the vast majority of my black people, my peoples, Black Americans, formerly enslaved and their descendants. We see your oppression. We see your struggle. We understand it. We understand it more than anyone else. My people have lost some 12,300,000 Africans to the white American empire. My peoples are struggling. We've lost some 12,300,000 just enslaved on ships coming to the North America, to America. That does not equate or count the other enslaved Africans, the countless millions that were lost to European colonization or lost to the Spanish Empire as they took them to the South Americas. I can only speak on the American oppression, the American struggle, the oppression of my people, and the struggle and fight for freedom. So by me educating the world, we see what's happening. We understand your suffering. We understand your suffering the best. We understand your suffering the most. But I will just say, please confide in other people of color. So for Black Americans, my brothers and sisters, we're the most equipped, well-educated peoples you've seen 400 years, and 12,300,000 of our peoples, enslaved Africans, killed, just coming to the Americans. And of the 12,300,000 Africans that were killed for the American slave trade, and we liberated about 4.3 or 4.4? No, it's 4.8. It's 4. I always, because a lot of white American, white power propaganda that tries to fuck up Black history. So you have to sift through the white American racism to then find the truth and remove those numbers, because there's 4.8 million enslaved that were freed after the Civil War. It's 4.8 million enslaved Africans that were freed after the Civil War by 1863. Right? It was 1865. It started in the 1860s. Like, the Civil War started like the fall of 1862 or something like that, and it wasn't until like 7-8 months later, going into 1861, they feel like had to kick off the Civil War, and then it wasn't until the end of 1863, 1865 or something like that, the Civil War kind of ended. It was a really short period. It was like a 2-year period, 5-year period, depending on which historian you talk to. It was a 2-year period, 5-year period. The war had already kicked off for months, the American Civil War, and then it wasn't until like 2 years, a year of fighting, and they felt like they were failing, and then a year of bolstering Black American soldiers, and then win the war again. So it goes back to white American men in the North who fight in the Union to liberate enslaved Africans, did everything they could. They're fighting against the Confederates and their white American men, and there was a stalemate. And in that stalemate, either side is thinking they're winning or losing. In the stalemate, Confederacy South thought, hey, they stalled, which means they're consolidating the power, which means they're going to push forward and keep doing more damage and stopping anti-slavers. And then they were pro-slavery. And then the North was like, it's a stalemate. It means they're consolidating power, which means we're winning, we're losing. We're going forward to stop the anti-slavers. Because they were everyday Americans that were anti-slavers. They would kill and free slaves. A dude named John Brown, and there's a whole bunch of thousands of Americans did this. There's like 18,000 force or something like that. Anywhere between 14 to 18,000 force of anti-slavers. White American men would go in and kill slavers in the South, and then free black people, and then bring them up further north. And then other black people would also kill other slavers in Confederate-controlled states, and then free their black people. Other black people free their black, and then would go north to free slave land, to land that is anti-slavery. They're trying to get off of pro-slavery land. And then check this out. As we free more able-bodied teenager black men and black women and enslaved black Americans and enslaved Africans that were in their 20s, women and men, once they kind of flooded north, they realized, holy shit, these white boys are dying for our freedom. They felt even more compelled. They were like, these Union white boys and all white unions were fighting, one, to stop the Confederacy because they were trying to destroy this democracy in the North, but then also fighting, liberating our peoples. So then they felt compelled, like, bro, these white boys from Chicago and Philadelphia, New York, and Maine and Cleveland and West Virginia, they're dying. For us to be free. And then it compelled young teenage women and men, they're black, and in their 20s and 30s and 40s, to then punch Confederates in the face, to punch these pro-slavers in the face and free their people. And then that's what happened. Guess who were the best snipers? Black men in the Civil War. Guess who the best spies were? Black women. Formerly enslaved black American women committing espionage acts. So they would dress up like a slave, and they would go back, gather a bunch of intel after their training, and come back and then fight. Heroic stories of black American women and men acting as spies, getting caught by Confederates, gathering a bunch of intel, freeing themselves, freeing the enslaved, and then stopping some slavers from pro-slavers, which was valiant work, justice personified. Justice personified, valiant work. Killing pro-slavers, freeing their kind, liberating their land, helping the Union, building valor, getting their medals, stopping the Confederacy, stopping these white nationalist cucks, pro-enslavers, stopping them, pro-democracy forces, doing good fight, doing good work. Some of the best naval units were this former black slave who stole a Confederate ship, fired, destroyed, navigated the whole ship, fired and destroyed the port of this Confederacy, destroyed this fortress. These heavy metal tank battleships were shooting cannons. he had the smarts and wits to like aim and fire, like he's playing the NBA like he's shooting, just aiming and firing like a shot, like a skill shot. He's an NBA player, former enslaved dude, takes this battleship, fired and destroyed a Confederate fortress, fired and destroyed their ports, hit the ammo, detonated, and then went up the coast and already coordinated a liberation, and other African enslaved people got onto this armored Confederate boat led by this formerly enslaved man. He was brilliant and a great fighter. There should be a movie about him. And free these people. And then by the time and people are like, how did he do this? How was he so good? He was an enslaved like assistant to like a Confederate general, like a naval commander or whatever. And so he had spent his whole life, understanding how to navigate the sea and the ocean and the boats and the currents and docks. And because he was enslaved to these Confederates, he knew how to park massive ships, how to guide large barges, how to move supplies. And then he realized, I know how to fire a weapon. He's like, he sees the simplicity of firing a cannon. And like a black person hitting a skill shot, the firing of a gun and weapon is like a giant skill shot. And so his whole life was in preparation of this moment and coordinating with resistance forces so that along the coast, other free enslaved Africans could get onto this boat and then free themselves up to northern anti-slavery free land. And it wasn't until all black units that Lincoln had that we kicked the shit out of these white nationalist cucks and the Confederates and marched all the way down with Grant. And along the way, there's great stories of Union Army kicking the shit out of the Confederates and freeing the slaves. And even in their hate, there are these moments etched in American history in the Civil War. Even as Grant and his armies would destroy these Confederate fortresses, the Confederates, they'd have their wagon of cows and pigs and food supplies, and then they would have slaves in the back, like any kind of Confederate officer would have his 3 or 6 horses. Okay, this is antebellum. 3 or 6 horses. Confederate officer would now have his hat, now have his ranks. He would have his 2 cows or 4 cows, so he'd have his either 3 or 6 horses. He'd have 2 cows and pigs, and then behind that he would have a chain of enslaved Africans. And then Grant and his officers will come along and bolt cut and destroy the chains, free these enslaved people, and tell them, hey, meet over there, gather supplies. We'll send you back up to the north. And then the Confederate officers adamantly, this happened multiple times, one time, adamantly would say that they own these enslaved people, as if they're items or cattle. They're not. They're humans. And Grant and the rest of the Union Northern Armies are like, these are the horses and the cows and the pigs you get to keep. You can keep your clothes and your blanket. And they're like, you're going south. And they're like, these are humans. And they're allowed to go north. I saw it time and time again. Especially Confederate officers. Because they were losing their wealth. They had a free enslaved workforce. They were rapists, every single one of them. They would rape their enslaved women. They had a free labor force that would generate them millions of dollars. Okay. And now instead of the low-life Southern white American that would work for a rich Confederate officer who had enslaved people, that was their meal ticket. So all their hate was unified. The low-life white American dude didn't have any money that was pro-Confederacy was like, he gets to rape other people's slaves as currency. Those sick bastards. White Southern American men, racist and codified hate, would rape black teenage girls that were slaves to their bosses as currency. So they get paid. They would take little black children and use them as bait to lure in other game. Southern white Confederates. Low lives. Not just rich, low lives. Take black American children and tie them up to metal poles. And as the black child, the 1-year-old or 3-year-old would scream, you can draw on like predators. Like alligators. In Florida. their hate and evil for the Palestinians. The Palestinians understand, the Gazians understand my people. We see your oppression. We understand your struggle. Understand that the vast majority of peoples in the world are pro-democracy, pro-human rights, pro-civil rights. Just understand that the vast majority of Americans see your oppression, are protesting, are advocating, or calling every day. My people have seen and dealt with 400 years of oppression and evil acts. You've lost 12,300,000 enslaved Africans just going to the American slave trade. I understand Palestinians have lost 265,000 minimum over the past 70 years to, or 60 plus years, or 70 plus years. I don't know which historian I talked to when I started, to Israeli oppression. So please, Palestinians and Gazians, confide into the vast majority of good Europeans and good Americans, good North Americans, Mexican brothers and sisters and cousins to the south, and our Northern Canadian brothers and sisters to the north, into Spain and France, and of the UK peoples, not so much British Parliament, the UK Parliament, but to the UK peoples, the French peoples, to the Polish peoples, to the Germanic peoples, to the Deutsch peoples, the Deutschland, the motherland for them, or the fatherland, the hinterlands, however you want to, but of the Germanic people, of the Deutsch people, confide in them, and of the Italians, confide in them. They are pro-democracy, they're pro-human rights, pro-civil rights, pro-human rights. But it is now 5:28 in the morning. It's 1 hour and 42 minutes of the stream, and I do have laundry I need to finish. And it's 5:30 in the morning. I might need to redo the laundry, because like you don't let wet laundry sit for a couple hours or something like that. When I get up Google, I need to Google how long wet laundry can sit wet, because I need to redo laundry. Let me codify, simplify, make this easier. So yeah, people are wondering, what? Hey, how? Six years Air Force. Came from the number one military unit, number one military base, and a few times number one for like 3 years or something like that. So when you're in the number one military base, number one military unit, Installation Excellence Award under the Barack Obama administration, and we came in like second place a few times to Andrews Air Force Base. Good people. Well fought, well played, like better team win. Andrews Air Force Base. Like we won like Installation Excellence Awards, like number one military unit. When I served like 3 years in a row, and then my final 3 years we were like second place to Andrews. Like, dude, he did that on purpose, man. I don't know. Or maybe Andrews just got whatever. They're always really quick. So there's a difference between when I speak from military experience than anyone else. Blessed and privileged to be a part of that unit, great men and women, but I also help, upgrade and level up that military unit with my everything, my intelligence, my athleticism, sharp wit, and all the other acumen skills that I have, aptitude, also. People are what? ASVAB score. Had an 88 electronics. And a whole bunch of other high scores too. But 88 electronics is my highest. 88 percentile electronics. And with that, the Air Force recruiter said, he looked at a paper and he was like, you can work, Technical Sergeant Michael Clay, never forget. The reason I can say his name now, enough time has passed, where he retired and got out, And I'll tell you like this: when an Air Force gentleman retires and gets out, you're not going to see or hear from him again because he got out, went civilian life, and kind of do their own thing, do their own thing. Become productive members of society, but you want to be able to track them. Trust me, you want to be able to track them. So technical starter Michael Clay, when he saw my paperwork and all that, I saw my scores and all that. My bad, the ASVAB score. He was just like, you could work he literally was like, it was really funny. There's another sheet they give you. They probably don't do it anymore. Another sheet they gave me. This is years ago. Another sheet they gave you, and like he just checked off all the jobs that I could apply for. And he sat there and he was just like, I think he said something like, he's like, I think he said something like, he's only seen this 11 times. He's like, I only seen this 11 times where I have somebody that could do every job except for one. And that one job was called nuclear scientist. And so for the Air Force, my aptitude allowed me to do every single job in the Air Force, except for nuclear scientist. And technically, I could probably still do that job too. The difference between a nuclear scientist and the Air Force is that you have to have the degree to show for it. But and there should be a resounding what is it from the audience if they see this in the future for posterity? Like a oh shit moment. Or like a oh fuck. Like oh shit, this dude's smart as fuck. It's more than that. Your ASVAB score is a test of your mechanical, administration, electronical, basic knowledge. And so, as a human, you can consider me like 90th percentile or something like that. But I've also been told I'm top 99%. So, whatever, take that for granted. Or someone else told me like I'm the top 1%. Whatever. And I was just like, whatever. So when I speak, I understand there is no job limitation that I can't do. I had the physical acumen, the aptitude, the intelligence to do all the jobs in the Air Force. No offense to this recruiter, good guy, but it was a funny moment when he was like, he checked off everything. He was like, you could choose any of the 165 jobs in front of you except for nuclear science. And then, but looking at it now, I could probably do that one too. There's a resounding shit. Like, yeah, I'm him. I've always been him. And no one comes close. The parents kept telling me, and I'm not unique. Whatever, but, a good way to humble me down. But I can't, because I have to lead. Started when I was like 12 years old, 13 years old. A great conversation with a great man. Had a magnanimous heart. Excellent teacher. Only as good as the tutors that you're taught. I say it again, the saying that I've created, not the universal truth. You're only as good as the tutors that you're taught. And so, it's a combination of there is no job outside my grasp. Actually, where it came from, to bring my parents full circle so you kind of understand, the humble me also expanded my intelligence. Because intellect was too high. By the time I was 13, 12 to 13, by the time I was 13 years old, my mind was equivalent of like a 30-year-old. By the time I was 12, 13 years old, my mind, my intelligence, was that of a 30-year-old. So actually, but my parents humbling me expanded my intelligence and my growth. Because if I would have stayed entitled in that moment, then it probably would have became something else. But what they hammered home, was they basically kept preaching to me that you can work any job you want to work. and they always, in a good way, if my ego got out of control, they were like a good mother and father, brought me back down to earth. Yeah, only black families understand it. Like, boy, man, shut up. Only the black culture, black American culture will understand. You know, when your father, mother, in a mixed household can bring you down reality real quick. Like go sweep your room, go, you know, take care of the dog, and go clean the kitchen, go prep the, you know, start doing some food prep in the kitchen. He's like, you're still under this household. Still under. My mother would say, you're still under my house. My mother would say, still under my house. Still under my rules, my safety, and my love. And she's like, you're gonna listen to what I'm doing. And I'm like, all right, I'm listening to what you're doing. But it kept me in check. And always my father instilled into me, fight for the little guy. Fight for the oppressed. Fight for the disenfranchised. Fight for the weak. My father instilled in me, be a gentleman, always. Open the door, regardless of whoever lives. My father was like, if you're younger, you see someone that's older, just hold the door for him. He was like, out of respect. He's like, and he also instilled in me, he's like, you might not always get respect back, but he's like, do it for yourself. Be a gentleman. So regardless of what anyone's age, color, creed, or person. If ever I saw someone, the perception was that they were older, especially when you're little, you're looking up at everyone that's older and taller. Just hold the door open with my foot. Let me pause my day, pause my time. Service before self. And then my mother taught me morality. Always questioning my why with a good why. And by my mother always being open and not shutting down my why, she's an incredible nurse. You know, she'd work security and be a nurse at the same time. She worked 2 jobs, raising 3 kids. And my mother would instill in me the morality of, she talked about, you know what the medical staff do? From her perspective, her quote was like, she's like, it didn't matter if a kid came in with a bullet wound. She's like, no one cared. All they cared about was the life in front of them. Sitting in my mom's Nissan Altima. She's driving in the morning. My brother has his headphones in and he's playing his Game Boy, and I'm sitting in the front seat. My mom was being a great mom, being a great mother, expanding my knowledge. She never questioned my why. She never shut down my why. I'm asking them the 5 W's. Other people understand what that is. You can keep up, or if you already know it. And she would instill in me the morality of it didn't matter if a person, young boy, comes in with a bullet wound into the hospital. And if it's a child, she's worked so many years in the children's section, this would occur. So sometimes there's children's hospitals, right? And a teenager comes in from a stabbing wound or a gunshot wound. And she said, it doesn't matter what race the kid is. All they see is a life. They see a child in front of them. And it's about saving that life. She was like, it's part of their obligation and duty and code and honor as medical staff to not do harm. Upon people that come into a ward or a hospital or a clinic or whatever. So that morality when I was young stuck with me. It was like, it clicked. Kids understand this. Most people understand this. Most pro-democracy forces understand this. Is the human life is worth fighting for. Regardless of who they are. Don't let others allow them to do harm or suffering. And I knew I was in a good presence around good men and women officers in the Air Force coming from a #1 military unit. People are probably like lofty or iffy. We're like the peak pinnacle of like pro-democracy. Completely anti-fascist. All the best and top Air Force units that are like, 1 to 10 or whatever, 1 to 5. And even the rest of our, of course, military is pro-democracy. But I'm talking like when you're the #1 military base, we're like the most anti-fascist, pro-democracy, most pro-American, open, liberal, good people. It's like being around extra mother figures and father figures and brothers and sisters. Your family expands and grows. and the love and respect expands and grows. Out of our cop unit that had 400 plus cops, we had only a few bad apples, like less than 10. I could count on my hand. It was like 7 or 8 cops that ever got like arrested out of our 400 plus for our military cop unit, because we were so like pro-American women and men and pro-democracy and liberal and open and diverse. We're playing basketball. It's a whole collage of different Americans from all over, different cultures from all over the United States in Kansas. Good times. And with the most liberal Air Force units, with the most pro-democracy Air Force units, that's why we were the #1 military unit, Installation Excellence Award under the Barack Obama administration. Because we're the most diverse, the most liberal, the most open, the most anti-fascist. That's why. So I come from the #1 military unit. And if the U.S. military is #1, then damn, blessed and privileged to level up my old base and the men and women I used to work with. And they've gone off and done good in society to themselves, becoming teachers and detectives and whatnot. And other job forces, they become security, they become entertainers and good people, men and women all over, women and men all over, leaving my unit. And you either serve 6 years, you serve 4 years, you serve 20 years, 15 years, they've all gone off and done good in America. Or stayed in, and it's still an invaluable resource to the Air Force in general. And to the community. They have the privilege and respect to bring great honor among their unit and their peoples in their community and their cities. They are, in the true sense, the best Americans. So I know France is up for the fight, and the kids are all right. Everyone that's like younger in the world, they see what Israel's doing is evil, committing genocide. They see what Russia's doing, it's evil, committing genocide. But at least Ukraine is an actual pro-democracy. At least Taiwan is actual pro-democracy. But Israel, they have a dictator who stripped away power and checks and balances on the executive branch. But if there is any kind of Israeli protests, they need to be more loud and more clear, because too many Palestinians are dying. Too many innocent civilians are dying. So, 1 hour and 58 minutes, over the 2 hour mark, 5:44 in the morning. This is a hopefully collection of people to understand art history, world history, European news, understanding what pro-democracy is, understanding kind of the 2 major conflicts that are occurring right now. Russia's illegal invasion, Russian Sea Empire illegal invasion led by Putin into Ukraine, Ukrainians pro-democracy, multicultural, multilateral, multi-equitable, just, multiracial society fighting for democracy and liberating their lands and their people. Shout out to the special forces of Ukraine for going deep into Russia and destroying trains, trying to stop supplies of Russian Sea Empire attacking their country. Shout out to all the international fighters and volunteers in Ukraine who are committing their thankless hours, tireless hours, fighting to liberate Ukraine. And to all the people of color that see around the world and see the suffering the Ukrainians suffer and has gone in volunteer time to rebuild and teach and spend money in Ukraine to show that we see and grieve with them. And to the 100,000 plus Ukrainian women and men that have laid down their lives and the ultimate sacrifice for their peoples, for freedom, for liberté, for justice, for democracy, for the republic. I should say, vive la Ukraine. But the problem is, Israel's not that. Israel's not Taiwan. Israel's not Ukraine. Taiwan is our brothers and sisters that are pro-democracy force that is gearing up as much defense as they can to defend their independence and their island. But Israel is not. Israel is doing everything that is of a white nationalist, fascist, military, dictatorial, authoritarian government. So yeah. Biden administration, the last thing I'll say, Biden administration should have ended the alliance, should have convened Congress, ended the alliance with Israel. And then U.S. under Biden should be leading a NATO contingency force to surround and blockade and control Israel and tell them to stand down. Now, if France wants to be the cool kids and gain the respect of the whole world, they can do it right now. France give them like 30 days. They would need the French people up for the fight to push their government to force Macau's government, or to the French government presidency people to push the other pro-democracy governments people to then build their contingency force and really kind of sail by and fly by and just look at disgust at the Biden administration for the good of humanity, for all of humanity, pro-democracy forces, countries that had pledges towards civil rights and human rights. I know France wants to. The second best fighting force in the world. Number one is still the United States. Number two, the French. And actually, number three, probably Canadians. People don't know. People don't know. Our Canadian sisters and brothers in the north are damn near probably like third best like NATO fighting force. And I'd say like fourth, probably like Australia. Australia probably is a close fourth in terms of sisters and brothers, arms that are pro-democracy that are excellent fighting force. Allies on the ground were fighting in Iraq and Afghanistan. And Iraq should be a democracy now. I don't understand why people aren't praising that. You know what I mean? Like Iraq is stabilized, has democracy, has free-flowing elections, have peoples representing their peoples, have representation of government, the pro-democracy force in Iraq. I don't understand why the news organizations haven't leaned in to really you know what I mean, in terms of geopolitics in the area. Why aren't other major news organizations going into Iraq, which is now, they're a good ally of the United States and of NATO on the ground. They already have kind of people in the region, expertise in the regions, scholars, academics, doctors, historians. So yeah, it's because mainly the Iraqis have fought against the Iranian government for a long time. The Iraqis have fought against Israelis and the Egyptian government, and the Iraqis have fought against Jordan and the Kurds, and they fought against the Russians and Afghanistan too. But the Iraqis now are pro-democracy. They're a good ally. They're experts in the region. The U.S. government should be doing more in tandem with the forces that are pro-democracy in Iraq. But the sad part is, the big overshadow part is the failure in Afghanistan. So now Afghanistan has a all-out male-dominated, sexist, misogynistic society led by the Taliban. They are a right-wing, far-right, military, authoritarian government that hates women. So in Afghanistan, you can say it's just another. And guess who the other dudes that came saddling up to Afghanistan? Russia and China. Russia and China came rolling in, giving more weapons, more tanks, more supplies, more communications, selling them satellites to the Taliban government, trading natural resources, flowing even more now. So you can say Afghanistan is a military, authoritarian, fascist government, Taliban control. But Iraq is stabilized, free-flowing democracy, independent, of course too. But stuff like that, more major U.S. news organizations should be in Iraq, asking their experts on the ground of the region, geopolitics of the region, a little more accurately. You know what I mean? major U.S. news organizations will bring in an American expert, of course, that's been either studying or understands a specific country or a region, but it's like all U.S. major news organizations could just send in more journalists to Iraq because there's already academics, doctors, and scholars, and historians that are there. You could get the information of like the beat of like what's happening in the region. So like Biden continues to mess up because he should be doing that too in terms of coordination. And you know it's bad because the Biden administration will disregard and disrespect the Iraq government, and they'll still be doing like missions in Iraq instead of coordinating with our ally that we're doing this. There has to be a level of trust. The Biden administration is already messing up. Biden administration is already messing up by continuing to stand by Israel when the vast majority of the United States does not. The vast majority of the United States peoples do not. And the Biden administration is continuing to mess up because they launched like 2 U.S. missions in Iraq and killed 2 targets that needed to be killed, but then they injured and killed other civilians, other Iraqi civilians. The Iraqi government was pissed. Like, Americans, what are you doing? Like, are we not parties in the region? Are we not allies to Iraq? Are we either respecting their independence and kind of helping them as like proxy allies? Or like, what the heck? So Iraq has democracy, and the Biden administration continues to mess up by disrespecting the Iraqi people who's helped the Iraqis and the Americans who fought side by side to fight the Taliban. You know what I mean? Like, y'all see what I'm saying? So the Biden administration continues to mess up. Like, and then Biden tries to play all this off by giving like more promises to the American public. So Biden, anytime there's the Biden administration's messing up. Anytime there's pushback from the younger Democratic base, the vast majority of people that are pushing against the Biden administration, we're getting to them because then they'll immediately start sharing and shifting out over a multi 3 to 5 day campaign on social media to like promote all the good that we've done for like, the American people. But we look at that as like human decency, like basic shit. So the very average American, the vast majority of Americans, we do see stuff that the Biden administration is talking. We're like, hey, yeah, cool, bro. Thanks for all like this positive stuff for Americans, but like some of that's just like common decency shit that you're just pulling off, you're just doing. We're more concerned about where are U.S. weapons going? They're going to Israel, as they commit genocide. Or like, why are we launching U.S. military weapons to like kill more Iraqis and like disrespecting the Iraqi government? Pissing off a friend and ally that we've worked so hard with over 20 years to fight the Taliban. Why are we pissing them off? Because Biden shouldn't mess up. Why is the Biden administration killing Yemen military personnel and civilians when the vast majority of the Yemen government is just creating blockades to push supplies that were earmarked? Okay, this is how it works. A bill of landing and a bill of lading and all that. Bill of landing, massive ship comes in. They're checking the bill of landing. Where is this giant cargo going to land? If the cargo is not going to Israel, not making a stop at Israel, it goes right through. So the Yemen government is fighting honorably. Like, if you have a blockade, we board a ship, and the bill of landing says it's going to Israel, we're going to then put them all back in the ship and then tell them to navigate around Africa. So literally, the U.S. government literally can't gaslight the nation, can't justify this, kills Yemen soldiers and civilians in Yemen, attacks them because we're taking cargo ships and telling them to travel 14 to 17 days around Africa to go do whatever they want to do, but you're not going to come through their water. So Yemen is fighting honorably, and the whole world sees that. Biden administration messing up again. So 3 parts the Biden administration is messing up: giving U.S. weapons to Israel while putting sanctions onto some Israeli families. The Biden administration wants to put some sanctions on some Israeli families, but you're going to keep sending weapons to Israel's genocide. As Israel's doing the exact same war crimes to Palestinians that the Russians and Putin is doing the exact same crime to Ukraine. People are like, what's the difference? I would probably guess the Biden administration is racist. They'll gladly give white Ukrainians weapons to stop Putin. And condemn Putin, of course. But we're giving weapons to Israel as they kill people of color, Palestinians, in Palestine. It's the only explanation. I'm not surprised. People are like, oh, Biden racist. He's the same dude that even other GOP members were calling out. The GOP members were calling out his hypocrisy. Because Biden would side with white GOP senators during his time in the Senate to still enact racist laws. And there were already brilliant black historians calling out Biden even before his campaign, but even before he ran for presidency, like, hey, bro, like, you're with those peoples, aka white American, rich, racist assholes that created policy to redline, right? Like, if Biden was so great, he would have broke bread, influence, and stopped a lot of the GOP white racist senators, but he didn't. He's so proud of his working with white racist GOP senators as they create racist policies, discriminatory banking practices, and discriminatory housing practices. So if there's ever an instance of Biden being racist, I'm pretty sure just look at like his 40 years in the Senate. His sexism towards women during the Anita Hill trial shows Biden's disrespect towards women. Him working across the aisle with racist white senators to have the same racist banking laws and racist housing laws during his 40 years also shows that he's racist. And then giving weapons and supplies to Ukraine, majority white country that has people of color in it, to stop Putin, because of course Biden doesn't like Putin. But giving weapons and supplies to Israel as they kill people of color in Palestine. So yeah. And other presidential candidates that were running against Biden lost or fell out because they were also either mayors, either mayors or other senators or the representatives that also would have their hands in some racist policy. Like Buttigieg never cleaned up as a mayor of a city, never cleaned up like his racist white cops. And that's what tanked his campaign. Once the news started flowing out, immediately, it was like super quick. It was like less than 30 days. Immediately, once the news started ramping up, the news started getting out. Basically, Buttigieg's like, "Hey, bro, you still like white racist cops like in your city you were trying to run." And then slowly, he was like doing a whole bunch of campaign stuff, meeting with multi-millionaire donors, and he just kind of abruptly was just like, "Oh, well, my campaign's not going down. Negative popularity is flowing, so I'm gonna bow out." And then he gets in the center stage and like bows out. But then he gets a cabinet seat. What? It has nothing to do with transportation too. Like, why did Buttigieg get transportation secretary where he has nothing to do with transportation background? It's really weird. Really weird. And even Biden's administration, I think he had like one Palestinian American, excuse me if I get this wrong, but I do know he's Palestinian American or Palestinian, working for the Biden administration, quits and backs away in protest. This happened this year, 2024. It was last month, January. They also kind of made the news. Other major news organization interviewed him, and this dude is already preaching what I'm preaching right now. They're advocating for now, like he could not stand by the president. The greatest protest and detest is he quit leftist administration because it's like he sees his people being killed by Israelis. He's like, if he sees that, he's like, he already knows Biden sees that. Because the White House, like every administration, has a beat and a pulse all around the world. What's happening? Sorry, my guy. Didn't mean to hit you in the head. I was moving my arms and I hit my plush in the head. My bad, my guy. He's been chilling. He's been chilling the whole time. He's working hard. So yeah. We're 2 hours and 14 minutes into the stream. Damn, even the past 15 minutes, I'm trying to educate the people. Because I'm him. I've always been him. 100% win rate, 140K. Will be a resounding, like, oh shit, my god, damn, like, yeah, like 100% win rate, 140K. Never lost. The tactics and strategy. Also playing video games since I was like 4 years old too. That helps. And playing 140K when I was like, right when I was like 13, 14. Playing 140K, so I was a teenager. 140K is like an expensive, it's like golf. It's like an expensive hobby. My bad. People don't understand what 140K is. You're a general with an army, and you command different armies in this fantasy sci-fi setting. And there's a lot of variables, but it is a learned game. It is a learned game like chess. So it's like chess, but like the armies and you're the general, like tactics and strategy. Being tactician, being tactical. So yeah, I had incredibly high ASVAB aptitude size. Allowed me to do every job in the Air Force except for nuclear scientist by my recruiter's account. And of course, from the Air Force account too, because everything's documented in the Air Force and recorded. So if you need me to ask the Air Force to redo the ASVAB thing, or let me redo the ASVAB again and get the exact same result again, but this time 100%. I've always been him. I did a mile, 4:14, 4:15. As we're sounding, oh shit, like, yeah. Basically, world record shattering speed. That's because of genetics. Grandfather being Caribbean. And my grandfather being the former UK heavyweight world champion. He was 24-0, boxing champion. Fought the 1957 heavyweight world championship. My grandfather represented the UK versus Yolanda Pompey versus Archie Moore, the American champion. Great fight. It went like 10 or 12 rounds or something like that. I forget. I had to rewatch it again. 10 or 12 rounds. Basically like a stalemate. And I felt like the American won on a technicality. It was like 10 or 12 rounds, and the rest of the time said that my grandfather was too tired to keep going. It was basically a stalemate, and then they gave the win to the American Archie Moore. I thought it was so weird. And very much for posterity and austerity and for people to watch in the future. I bet I'll probably hear a resounding thought processes of people saying, damn, that sounds really American-like. You know what I mean? Like, stalemate between UK black British fighter and black American boxer. But even if it was a stalemate, it's like it went to the Americans. So, from my grandfather, I've inherited, and my grandmother and grandfather inherited, and luckily enough blessed to have their genes. On my mother's side and my father's side, blessed and gifted to have the genetic makeup from them too. People say you stand on the shoulders of giants. For the uninitiated and uneducated, they're talking about your genetic past. Ask me why you stand on the shoulders of giants, because their life experience would measure it. They would stand tall. And if you're young, your life experience is just beginning. So you can stand, but you're not that tall. So you stand on the shoulders of giants. The 80 years, 100 years, those lives, imagine that. It's like 200 years or 300 years, one lineage. So when you equate it to like my 4 grandparents, it'd be like 400 years. How do you want to equate it? It's like 400 years of life experience to my 30-something life experience. Oh, my bad, I'm 35. My 35 years of life experience. I look at it like there are 400 years of life experience. There are 400 years of life experience like a pillar. Where I imagine 100 years, 100 years, 100 years, 100 years, so it's 400 years. Imagine pillars. Mine's only 35 years old, my little pillar. 35 years old. So it's 400 years. It's like you're standing on giants. I understand their stories. I understand their struggles. Through their life, they gave up to me. And then you would take your parents' ages too. Right? So my mother and father are alive today. their lives, since they're older, their experience, is, more than mine, and tack that on to. So it's like 500 years, just life experience. You're standing on the shoulders of giants. So I already know that my grandparents, bless their hearts, they're all past, would be proud of what their grandson has become. A grandfather that was a boxing excellence, black UK excellence, black excellence in the UK, taken from the Caribbean islands to train and fight, represent UK. He'd be proud of me in terms of my athletic prowess. I can already see it now. My grandfather's still around. Would have been clocking a 4:15 mile, whatever. Running 4 minutes 15 seconds for a mile. And being 152 pounds and power cleaning 280. Power cleaning 280 pounds. 150 pounds myself. Power cleaning 280. I weigh a little bit more now. I weigh 167 now, but in terms of the Air Force, it was so funny being in the Air Force and being my height and only 150 pounds and just like being able to physically just do more than anyone else. Couldn't keep up. Couldn't run. I would work out, and then I'd want to work out again, and then my friends would be tired. Like I'd work out for an hour in the morning. I could work out for an hour in the evening. I could work out for an hour at night, like 3 hours a day. And you know who would do that? Kobe Bryant. His routine was hour in the morning, hour in the afternoon, hour in the evening, because he talked about showering 3 times a day. And another reporter, the follow-up question was like, why do you shower 3 times a day? It's because he works out 3 times a day. But he was honing his craft too while he worked out. So he'd work out, then practice almost 6 hours a day too, which is ridiculous. Sometimes he would get a 30-minute hour workout, whatever he's doing, running or cardio or calisthenics, and then he would do an hour practice, spend time with family and kids, business, and do it again. He'd work out for 30 minutes or an hour. Okay? So he would do 30-minute workout, 30-minute basketball, so an hour. Or you do an hour workout, hour basketball, 2 hours. So you either do 3 or 6 hours in a day. And that routine, which is time on task. So if Kobe is committing 7 days, 3 hours each, that's 21 hours a week towards basketball and his craft. He's staying in shape, massages, workouts, yoga, stretching, plyometrics, dynamics. He's doing 21 hours a week. That means he's committing like 80 plus hours to 120 hours a month to his craft. So when people talk about Kobe, it's the time on task. He was so dedicated to his craft that it showed. He became the Black Mamba. He became the dude. He became it. Number 8, right? Number 7, number 8. Kobe's worn like multiple different jerseys. I forget what his main number is. Only hardcore Kobe fans will like tell you like his main number and all that. I forget. Like Kobe wore number 7. Wore number 8 as a number or something like that for Lakers. He's worn other numbers too, and I forget. But thought it was time on task. I know my grandmother, all her kindness, the mother's side, fighting for our people, Black Americans that have been oppressed in America. Should be proud of what I've achieved, what I've done, where I'm going. My grandfather on my father's side would be proud of my endurance, resolution, being resolved, being magnanimous. And for our other peoples, he was of Native American descent. My grandfather on my father's side, Native American descent. I am at 20% Native American. But this is my land. These are my peoples. Quite literally. So when the American White Empire was committing genocide to my peoples, quite literally, I am of their greatest dream. I literally sit on the shoulders of giants. Literally, sit on the shoulders of giants. These are my peoples. This is my land. And the other sovereign nations other native nations have their own populations and groups and cultures scattered all across the Americas, and allowed to operate and interoperate on their own sovereign land without use government control. Everywhere from the Dakotas to the Idaho to Oklahoma to Kansas to Arizona, New Mexico, California, Arizona, and all that, Colorado, Utah. There's all Native American First Nations, or the First Peoples. The First Peoples and the First Nations, or Native Nations. Native Americans have their own. Called Native Nations if you want, because technically not the Americas. This is what the Europeans called this region, the North America and South America. And then they just kept this like sticking with it. But if people are wondering like why I advocate, fight for, preach for, 40% black, 20% Native American. I know my story, I know my history, I know my peoples. So yeah, I'm him. Always have been, always will be. So yeah, 2 hours and 26-minute stream, 6:13 in the morning, and I still have. My grandmother, my father's side, would be. She'd be proud that She was a staunch supporter. She was anti-racist. My grandmother was a little old Latina lady, light skin. My grandfather on my father's side is Native American, dark skin. Quite literally, Native Americans, just in general, look like dark skin. Latinos look like dark skin Mexicans, but Native Americans in general were all dark skin. I'll say it again. Native Americans in general were literally like all dark skin. It wasn't until the mixing of European colonizers did they, of course, start having like a lighter hue in their race and the other nations, First Nations races, and their offspring, children, descendants. And so, my grandmother, moments when she's the rich, older, rich lady. When I was little, she's in her 60s, and she's the rich kind of older lady in her 60s who basically just looks Caucasian, looks white Latina, and she had her two black, dark skinned grandchildren. Wherever she went, looking back at it now, because my own naivety, I didn't understand it, but she was a powerful presence, being anti-racist and shifting, the racism discord by being the shield. She saw nothing but love, and she would always demonstrate nothing but love. But no one can tell her different. People don't understand. I'll try to explain to you the power of my basically white grandmother on my father's side, because she's light-skinned Latina, basically white. She had a all red leather seat Cadillac with all red leather paint Cadillac. It had gold trimming, and it looked mean, like a Spanish empress. So wherever she went shopping, wherever we ate at, ain't no one can tell the difference. Because she dressed to the nines, she dressed to impress. Every time she left the house, she's elegant and grace. And stacked with when you see like the light-skinned Latina in her 60s, two black children, and she has like pearls and like gold and diamonds. The wealth and the vehicle, the gold-trimmed, red-painted, red leather Cadillac, is like an intimidating force. She's basically, as she moved around my city, we could eat anywhere, we could be anywhere, because ain't no one going to say no to her money. But also, ain't no one going to say racist shit to her face when she has two black grandchildren. And she was also flaunting, saying, y'all don't have the lawyers to match her. So, it's not even young. It's a full crash course in racism resilience. I'll leave it at that. And should be proud of who I am today, being anti-racist. So we're 2 hours and 30 minutes into the stream, 6:17 in the morning. It's probably a good time to end the stream.